And we're live.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Baines. I am the President and CEO of the NATO Association of Canada. We're a charitable NGO dedicated to informing Canadians about the value of security and the importance of NATO. That's something that most Canadians have not had to think about for a long time. That is quickly, swiftly changing. I think everybody will agree. And the great thing is that, though we may have to be concerned about security, Canada is part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is the premier multilateral security organization, not only in the globe, but in probably the history of the world. It's a simple idea that an attack upon one is an attack upon all. We look after our friends, and nobody wants to attack a hockey team. That's the whole basis of the organization and the way that it maintains peace. It stops fights before they start. And it's so essential that Canadians understand the central place of NATO in our security and by maintaining the world that we want, a world that reflects our interests and our values. The NATO Association of Canada puts on events across the country, online events like this one, and also social media, and publishes articles throughout the year. So if you're not part of our community, please join us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and Instagram. And of course, please subscribe to us here on YouTube. Today, we're going to have a wonderful discussion as part of our diplomatic speaker series, and I'll pass it off to our fine moderators, Marina, Hassan, and Justinas, to take us through the discussion and introduce our guest. Thank you so much, everyone, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Robert, for your kind introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Diplomatic Speaker Series, exploring Canada's relations with its NATO allies and partners in a changing global security environment. My name is Marina Zaki, and I'm an engagement coordinator at the NATO Association of Canada.
Hello, my name is Justinas Stankus, and I am a senior editor at the NATO Association of Canada.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Ben Dixby, for joining us today. My name is Hassan Ahmed, and I am also an engagement coordinator at the NATO Association of Canada.
We are honored to be joined today by Mr. Trygve Bindixby, Head of Mission of the Embassy of Norway to Canada. Mr. Bindixby, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, before we get into Mr. Bindixby's opening remarks, I would briefly like to introduce him to our audience. So before his arrival in Ottawa, Trygve was Director for Energy, Climate and Environment at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He has also served as Sherpa for the Prime Minister on renewable energy and the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, and as a Deputy Director for Latin America and the Caribbean. He has been posted to Venezuela, Tanzania, and South Sudan, the Inter-American Development Bank, and to Norway delegations to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, in Paris. Mr. Bindixby, we invite you to begin with some opening remarks before we proceed to the questions.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, and it's really a great pleasure and honor for me to be invited by you to speak about Norway and NATO. And first of all, I'd just like to share that I've been in Canada a year now. It's been truly wonderful. I've been received in such an amazing way by everyone here. And it's been also a very busy time, not the least in the security area. Norway and Canada, we're both founding members of NATO, and that's the backbone of our defense. And we are such like-minded countries in the defense space, but also on foreign policy more generally. And of course, we share the Arctic and our focus on the Arctic, and the Arctic as our number one defense priority. So very happy to be here today, and I'm looking forward to speak more to these issues.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bindixby, for your remarks. Now we'll proceed with the questions. It's the moderated part of our discussion. And I'd like to start with the first question. So Norway has played a central role in advancing NATO's Arctic strategy through major exercises like Cold Response in 2022 and Nordic Response in 2024. In light of the changing climate conditions and increased Russian activity, how is Norway updating its military doctrine and defense priorities in the High North in 2025?
Well, thank you for that question. So, as you all know, the geopolitical situation is changing. The world security situation is more serious than it has been in a very, very long time. And generally for NATO and in Europe specifically, we are living with a much more dangerous Russia. Norway has a short 196-kilometer border with Russia, so that's always been a key focus for us. And we're also seeing increased competition between the global powers and some changes in the US. So from Norway's side, to address this, our Prime Minister, just a month ago, he launched a new security strategy. It's actually our first national security strategy. And this is a cross-sectoral document that expresses how Norway will promote its own security interests, given the changing background. I think we'll touch upon some of the issues that I'm going to mention now a little bit in more detail as we go along, but just to say that digital attacks, sabotage, disinformation, covert activities, these are a key part of the security strategy as well. And there are more serious threats than we have seen in a long time. And our society's resilience and that of our NATO allies, our economic resilience as well, is so key for us in the time ahead, and strengthening the alliances that we have with our NATO partners, but also more broadly globally. Specifically when it comes to the Arctic and the High North, as is the case for Canada, for Norway, this is our most important strategic region. About a tenth of our population, they live above the polar circle, so in the Arctic. And for us, Arctic policy is also our national policies, key national interest. Norway is scaling up its investments in defense, also in infrastructure. And another key aspect of this is increase the civil preparedness, make our society more resilient, make the population more aware of changing circumstances, and to be better prepared. As I said, our allies are key. U.S. Key ally for us. Work very closely with them, including in the High North, through a number of different initiatives. Also with Canada, I'll get back to that in more detail as we go along. We'll also get a chance to talk about Finland and Sweden's NATO membership. That's been a key change for us. And then also it's worthwhile mentioning NATO allies in the North Atlantic, the UK, Germany, France, Netherlands. For instance, we recently agreed with UK that we should negotiate a major defense cooperation agreement. So a lot of things happening in that space. And I think lastly on this question, I'd like to say that there is increased interest in the Arctic globally. But the situation in our Arctic, it's stable. It's also closely monitored by us and our allies. And sometimes when you read the news, you can get the impression that there's some sort of governance vacuum up in the north. That's not the case. The Arctic is governed by international law and existing governance structures. For instance, the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Seas. Our maritime borders are clear. Our economic zones are clear. Rights to the continental shelf have been worked out. And there are a number of institutions in the security space, of course, NATO being the preeminent one, but also in other areas, there are important institutions that regulate different activities up in the north. And for us, it's a key priority that these institutions should be maintained and protected. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. Sort of building on the theme you touched upon, focusing on Arctic security and NATO allies more specifically. As you know, the Nordic region has undergone a historic transformation recently with Finland and Sweden joining NATO. Given Norway's long-standing NATO membership, is there a plan to contribute to build a coherent Nordic defense posture? Do you foresee the emergence of a structured Nordic cooperation, perhaps a Nordic-specific pillar within the alliance, particularly in terms of operational planning, exercises, logistics, things of that nature?
Thanks. So I just like to start by saying that we've been very close with our Nordic allies for a long time. We are very economically integrated. We have had free movement of people and labor for decades. But due to different historic experiences, we had different alignments with NATO. So as probably most of you know, Norway and Denmark founding members of NATO, Sweden remaining neutral, and Finland forced into a security agreement with the Soviet Union. But despite of this, there's always been very close contact also on the defense side. But with the membership, it's really opening up a door and it's made things a lot easier for us. So as you just said, Hassan, we will see and are seeing already more joint planning, more integrated exercises, more work on logistics. And these things are being worked on as we speak. So I don't have a lot of details to share with you, but just to confirm that this is happening and it will happen. And it for us, it's really a great advantage in our defense of the Arctic, that we will be able to operate even more closely and seamlessly together and join these forces even closer, and that is increasing our capabilities and our deterrence. So for us, the NATO membership of Finland and Sweden is really great news.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bindixby, for expanding on Norway's close relations and cooperation with its allies. I'd like to ask a similar question, perhaps, but focusing on the Hague Summit, the 2025 NATO Summit in The Hague, which emphasized strengthening collective defense, adapting to emerging technologies, and addressing non-traditional security threats, such as hybrid warfare, cyber attacks, and climate change. How does Norway, in the light of the Hague Summit and what was discussed in the summit, interpret the alliance's updated strategic direction? In particular, what role does Norway see for itself in shaping NATO's response to these evolving challenges specifically, and how it might contribute to advancing policies and capabilities in these areas moving forward?
Thanks. So I think there's both continuity and change. So the continuity is it's our geographic location with the Arctic, our proximity to Russia in the north, Russia's vast military capabilities that are located just across our border with the Northern Fleet and a very significant nuclear capability up there. So for Norway's part, we will continue to be NATO's eyes and ears up in the north, and Russia, of course, will remain our strategic challenge. I think the change is that we are scaling up our capabilities very rapidly. So we are currently at a bit more than 3% of defense spending. That includes our support to Ukraine. But we have in these past years procured a number of new capabilities. And you mentioned it just, Marina, and I did so too. One particular concern, and this is an ongoing threat for us and our allies, is in the cyberspace and these hybrid threats. So they're also working domestically and with NATO to scale up our capabilities, recruit more people, becoming more competent, getting new equipment that can help us be even better at facing these threats. And I think for us as well, it's been more than 3 years now since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and our support for Ukraine has been very, very substantial, and it's ongoing. And there are important lessons learned from that conflict as well that we are and that we need to apply in our own in our own defense and our own deterrence. So just learning from these rapid technological changes that are happening on the battlefield and more broadly in the world, in the cyberspace, artificial intelligence, quantum, but just drones as well. So this is definitely having an impact on discussions back home in Norway, and also in how we are addressing our capabilities and needs in the time ahead. Just quick word on climate change as well. Couple of years back, I went up to Norway's northernmost north, I'd like to say. Svalbard, this archipelago that is way up there. It's not a very densely populated area. There's basically one town and a research facility. I think about 4,000 people live there. They receive a bit of tourism. It's pretty much demilitarized, that area, and most is protected as a national park with great restrictions on the use. But I just want to give you that example. The area is mostly covered by glaciers, and then it melts during a short season. Temperature increases up there are 3 to 4 times the global average, and I could see firsthand how rapidly this is changing. And this is general for the Arctic as well. So this does have an impact on us and on Canada and others as well. For example, we need to adapt our infrastructure to these changes. And there's a lot of research and knowledge that needs to be generated. And I think here in Canada, one of the first visits I had here was to the NATO Center of Excellence on Climate and Security in Montreal. It's been created quite recently, but they're operative now, and they're doing great work in this area, and Norway is also contributing. So we're learning and adapting as we go along on these important issues.
Thank you for this comment, Mr. Bendixby. Now, I wanted to ask you about the commitment to raising the defense spending, and namely on June 20th, 2025, your government committed to raising the defense spending to 5% of the GDP, citing growing unpredictability in the global security landscape. And this is something that you echoed in your own speech a few minutes ago. Could you please elaborate on the specific domestic defense priorities? How are these being strengthened under this plan, and how do we align with Norway's NATO commitments and national security goals? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So it's been a very rapid scale up, and it does also present some challenges, or at least some questions, I would say. It is a broad scaling up of our defense capabilities. So I'll just very briefly mention some of the things that we are doing. We're prioritizing the acquisition of more ammunition and spare parts. This is similar for a lot of our NATO allies as well. And of course, a lot of the shells and ammunition has been given to Ukraine. So there have been ongoing efforts now to scale up the capability of our own defense industry to produce more rapidly. So that's a key part. We are strengthening our land forces with the development of 2 new land combat brigades, including heavy infantry in the north and light infantry in the south. We are increasing our air defense, investing in long-range air defense systems to protect against cruise missiles and other missiles, unmanned aerial systems. We very recently received the last of our 52 F-35, so that capability is there and operate and quite significant. And we've donated some of our older F-16s to Ukraine. Maritime is key for us. We have vast oceans to protect and surveil. So scaling up the capabilities there with patrol aircraft and new helicopters. and looking at warships as well, and getting new submarines through our wonderful collaboration with our German friends. I did mention it initially as well, sort of the broader security area, and making sure that our society is broadly more resilient. It's working on the home guard as well, increasing budgets, and then Ukraine also key part of our defense, the heroic struggle that Ukraine is carrying out against the Russian aggression. It's key for Europe's security, and that's a key part of why we support Ukraine. And I think we're at around take that number with a little bit of a grain of salt, but I think at around 10 billion Canadian dollars this year. So and it's been scaled up significantly this year as well. So at the recent NATO summit, we did commit to the 5%, the 3.5% for direct defense spending, as you know, and the 1.5% for broader infrastructure spending that is of utility to our defense. And we at the NATO ongoing talks on how we can, at the NATO level and European level, make sure that our capabilities are even more interoperable and flexible, and that we can get as much deterrence as possible jointly out of all the NATO members, new investments in defense and new capabilities.
Well, thank you for that answer. It was very thorough and detailed. Turning on a slightly different note, Norway, as you know, has a strong and well-deserved international reputation as a peace broker in various conflicts. And so in that regard, it has also served as a bridge builder between large and small states within NATO. In today's increasingly polarized environment, what strategies does Norway use or intend to use to promote constructive dialogue and maintain that NATO alliance unity across a diverse membership base that at times may have different political or national objectives in mind?
Yeah, thanks. There are various angles to this. There's a more global angle to it, and the bridge building there. And there's, of course, the internal NATO internal European angle. So just to address the last part first, the recent summit in Brussels, as we see, it was a great success. We got the agreement on the 5%. The alliance showed a lot of unity. The defense spending increase that we agreed on is the largest since the Cold War, and it's needed because of Russia. As everyone knows, there are some countries pushing for increases. Some are a little more reluctant, but we need it because the world is changing and because the threat from Russia. I think also what we saw in Brussels is that the U.S. commitment to NATO is still strong, and it was confirmed there. And I think for both Canada and Norway, U.S. remains our most important security ally. So by and large, and as was said here initially, NATO has been a tremendous success, and it continues to be so. And it's also showing capability to reform and adapt to changing circumstances. I think for our part, as you said, Hassan, we like to see ourselves as a country that's not only doing its share and coming up with capabilities, contributing, including in areas where we like to believe that we have some special capabilities, such as in the Arctic and on the north, but also building bridges across diversity. And for Europe as well, we are a set of different countries, all democracies, all free countries, and it is in the nature of things that it will be diversity and diversity of opinions. So for us, it does speak to the strength of the organization that we are able to maintain that unity and also continue our defense for our shared values, rule of law, democracy, freedom, human rights, and so on. We have strong economies, and that also speaks to our resilience. So just to say that I think some of these diversities of opinions and discussions, of course, they're well known. There is about a small number of countries that have a little bit of different opinions about how we should address Russia. But keeping that in mind, I think it is a quite a resounding success that we are able to continue with our support for Ukraine in the time ahead and maintain our security interest. There might have been a question too, Hassan, about the kind of the broader global bridge building as well, and I'm happy to address that if that's of interest.
Well, it wasn't on our list of questions, but that seems like a nice, interesting tangent. Norway has hosted several international forums, whether it was mediating in the Sri Lanka civil wars, the 1993 Oslo Accords, conflicts in Central America, even outside NATO, Norway has played that role. So if you would like to expand on that, we would love to hear it. Yes.
Yeah, so I think the key thing, and I worked in this space a bit. I was involved with the Colombian peace process for a number of years, and I think as we see the world becoming more polarized, and there's this massive impact from social media, a lot of disinformation, a lot of false narratives out there. The ties that countries like Norway, but also Canada, we have to a broader set of countries in Asia, in Africa, and Latin America, they become so important. And NATO for our security, that's our core alliance, but more broadly in our foreign policy, but also to address global security challenges, working with a broad set of countries and strengthen the friendships and the alliances that we have with these countries is so key. And for Norway, for the past, I would say, 70 years, this has been such a key part of our foreign policy and our identity as well. Our support for, I spent 5 years in Africa myself. The support that Norway and some other countries gave for the liberation struggles in Africa and the fight against apartheid is still very well remembered. So that gives credibility, and a key part of that too is not just sharing our opinions about what we think is right and what we think others should do, but also listening, and that is also the fundamental principle of our peace and reconciliation work, and talking to everyone, listening and finding ways to use diplomacy and build bridges and compromises. So I think in essence, what I'm trying to get at is, as the world is changing and there's more tension, there's more disagreement, there are conflicts, diplomacy and the willingness to sit down and listen and talk and try to understand each other's differences and build bridges just becomes even more important.
Thank you, Mr. Bindixby. Thank you for your insightful answer and for discussing both the challenges that Norway as other NATO members are facing, but also its great role in ensuring the unity of the alliance and ensuring and building bridges with other countries, not even members of NATO. Now, I know you've mentioned burden sharing and especially differing opinions or differing national priorities for NATO members specifically. I would like to, if you could please expand on that in the light of the recent Hague Summit and when it comes to burden sharing specifically. How can Norway ensure a more balanced burden sharing across NATO's political, financial, and military responsibilities?
Thanks. So as I said, Norway and European allies and Canada, everyone, we need to scale up our defense capabilities, our defense spending, because of the Russian threat. So this is a necessary step, and a changed burden sharing follows as a result of that. So we are in agreement with these changes. And a key part of it is also scaling up our defense industry capability. This is already happening in Europe to a great extent. It's happening in Norway. We're also helping Ukraine scale up its defense industry capability, key for their struggle against the Russian aggression, but more broadly key for Europe's own deterrence. So we see this as a positive step forward. And as I said, the Americans are still on board, and that is a good thing. So again, going back to the recent NATO summit, we think it was a very good outcome of that summit in this regard.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ben-Dixby. The next question would be on the shared values that you recently mentioned, and I was happy to hear that you reiterated the commitment of Norway towards such values that Canada shares, like liberal democracy and multilateral cooperation. And in the light of the rising authoritarianism and geopolitical fragmentation, how can both countries reinforce the international rule-based order together, whether through NATO, the UN, or other global forums? Thank you.
Thanks. So, Canada and Norway, we are very, very like-minded in our foreign policy, and there's a long Justinas are strong believed in a rules-based international order, in respect for international laws and conventions, democracy, respect for human rights, for respect for territorial sovereignty, etc. And we both believe that the best way to protect and maintain this order is through multilateral collaboration. So for us, it's a lot about continuity, continuing to support key multilateral institutions in international legal space, in the UN, on development cooperation, globally, regional institutions as well. NATO is also a key part of this, the way we see it. And there is pushback from some countries.
Sorry for the glitch, everyone. Mr. Ben-Dixby will be reaching soon, and we will be able to hear him again.
Yeah, I think I lost the connection there for a second, but just to say that we have NATO as one key alliance, but we also need to look more broadly to our friends and partners in outside of Europe and North America, to Africa, to Asia, to Latin America, and work closely with our friends and allies there to keep defending the international order and strengthen it in the time ahead, and find ways to work on these partnerships. And then I think lastly, sorry, also key is to look at the long term. So some of our adversaries, they're playing a very long game, and we have to do the same. We have to think about today and tomorrow, but also about next year, but also about decades to come, because we will need the rules-based international order and institutions also in the more distant future.
Thank you for that. The next question is related to Norway's and European energy infrastructure, including undersea cables and pipelines. As you know, it's increasingly vulnerable to sabotage and cyber attacks. So what measures is Norway taking in that regard to protect critical energy infrastructure? But also, how can other NATO members support states like Norway in securing and shoring up these strategic assets?
Yeah, thanks, Hassan. So I'm sure most of those that listen, they are aware of these sabotage operations in the Baltic Sea. They have not impacted Norway's infrastructure directly, but Norway has we are a maritime nation. We have the Svalbard archipelago in the north. The North Sea is full of gas and oil pipelines and lots of other infrastructure. So this is an issue of key interest to us. So what we do is we have increased our vigilance. We are procuring new capabilities. We are working closely in NATO and with certain NATO allies on increasing the surveillance, the capabilities. And again, deterrence is key. So the more broader buildup of our capabilities is also part of protecting our infrastructure. I did mention our for the Arctic and the oceans, working with the North Atlantic countries. So we have the UK just across the North Sea. We have the other Nordics with Germany, with France, with Canada, and with America as well. Working and finding ways to protect our critical undersea infrastructure and to counter these hybrid threats. Deterrence is about sending a clear message. So by scaling up our capabilities, we're also sending a message that we are vigilant and that there will be cost to acting unwisely in this space.
Thank you so much. And the last question coming from me personally is also related to energy, but rather transition to the clean energy and reduction of CO2 emissions. More specifically, as energy producers navigating this global transition, Norway and Canada must balance climate commitments on one hand with the energy sovereignty on the other. And from Norway's perspective, how can a country lead on climate action while at the same time maintaining strategic control over its energy resources in an increasingly tense and competitive geopolitical environment? Thank you.
Thank you, Justinas. And I would add this question that I've had to deal with quite a bit in the past. I think my previous job before coming to Canada was heading Norway's energy and climate work. So happy to try to speak to this. I'll try to do it briefly, but just as a starting point to say that this is another area where Canada and Norway are so similar. Oil and gas is such an essential part of our economies and our exports for employment, for government revenue, for innovation in the technological space, security, absolutely essential. And at the same time, both Canada and Norway, we have high ambitions on climate and to reduce our emission. We have both committed to transitioning away from fossil fuels. So that is the stated long-term goal. We are working towards getting rid of these fuels, but it's a long-term goal. We have in Norway, we have a 55% emission reduction target by 2030. We recently added another one, which is 70 to 75% by 2035. And we have a target also to be a net zero. Speaking to Norway specifically, absolutely dependent on our energy We are currently providing more than a third of Europe's energy imports as Europe is trying to wean itself off the Russian gas. Our natural gas is becoming even more important. It's keeping the industry and the economies in Europe alive, and it is absolutely necessary. And I think one of the things we saw after the Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine was that, for instance, coal production, energy coal from coal went up in Europe, and so emissions also went up. So that was an unattended, unwanted consequence of that conflict. And gas is a much, much better alternative from a carbon emission point. And the world also needs affordable energy for food, for economic growth, and just to maintain our societies. So we have to do two things at the same time. We have to make sure that our economies are resilient, that they are sustained, and particularly so in a more difficult security environment, as we have spoken about. And at the same time, we need to rapidly reduce our carbon emissions more broadly. The world will remain dependent on oil and gas for decades to come, but also we need to work multilaterally and globally to reduce the emissions. Just a couple more words about Norway. In the oil and gas sector, we have reduced our emissions from that sector by 25% in recent years, and it continues to fall. Methane, which is a key climate polluter, we have had strictest regulations on flaring and methane emissions since the 1970s. So our oil and gas is relatively low emission. And then domestically, we have a number of policies. Almost all new sold cars in Norway now are fully electric. It's been a big public investment, but also maritime transport in Norway, which is important, is being electrified. We are electrifying our oil and gas production out on the platforms. So a lot of things happening in the climate space. We're part of Europe's carbon emission policies with high taxes on emissions as well. So all this is having an impact. We'd like to see it happen even more rapidly, and it is costly for society. It does involve some trade-offs, but in Norway, we believe that those trade-offs are necessary, also in the energy space.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bendixby. And now with our final question from the moderated part of our discussion for today. And I have the honor to ask it. So thank you for expanding on Norway's strategy in defense and collaboration with Canada when it comes, again, to defense, energy, and climate security. But other than these areas, and again, given Canada and Norway's shared Arctic geography and strategic concerns, what new areas of collaboration do you see emerging in, let's say, the next 5 years, especially in domains that we haven't discussed this far, like undersea surveillance or cold weather operations, for instance?
Thanks. So just to start by saying that we've had a very close defense collaboration with Canada for decades. And throughout my short time in Canada, it's been such a great pleasure when we meet with members of the Canadian Armed Forces. A very large number of them, they have been to Norway, they've been training in Norway. And the same thing when I talk to the Norwegians in uniform. So that's been ongoing for a long time. Key part of it is the Arctic. And, we are in NATO, the two countries facing the Atlantic and being Arctic members and having the Arctic as our number one defense priority. So a lot of mutual learning that has been ongoing for a very, very long time. To solidify this, in 2023, we signed a new memorandum of understanding on collaboration between our armed forces. And also last year, another agreement on collaboration between our Coast Guards. And now the Coast Guard of Canada, I understand, is being integrated in the Ministry of Defence. So we'll have the same structure as we do in Norway. So just a lot going on in the military collaboration space between our navies and our Air Force and our special forces and a lot more. And I think for us, as we continue to have the Arctic as our number one priority, that's where we'll see a lot of the innovation and the increased collaboration and the mutual wish to strengthen this even further. We're both procuring new systems, new capabilities. I think one interesting example is the P8 Poseidon that I think the Canadian Air Force will get. We already have that. The F-35s is another example. Having the same systems, it facilitates our interoperability and opens up for other types of collaboration as well. And one thing I also like to mention here is the submarines. So Norway and Germany, actually Germany was offering the production of submarines and Norway needed new ones. And then we assessed all the alternatives out there, and based on our needs, the ability to operate in the Arctic in extreme weather conditions, and we decided to enter into a collaboration with Germany, and we believe it has been really, really great. And it's an example of with the Germans, we come in with our expertise on the Arctic, our vast oceans, our experience in the maritime. Germany, a big industrial power, also significant maritime capabilities, both NATO members. It provides a space for great collaboration, interoperability, and also collective deterrence. And we know that Canada is also looking to provide submarines, procure submarines. And we think this would be a great alternative for Canada. And one of the things that we get with working so closely with the Germans, it's not just that we're scaling up our capability and our deterrence, but it's also very cost effective. So we have a proven, mature concept, the submarine that is being built currently, and we will jointly take care of maintenance and training and logistics in the time ahead, and that will guarantee that we have a very high level of operability and capability also in the time ahead. And I think for our part, it's the Germans that build the submarine, but there is a lot of input from Norwegian defense industry, and that's also a great opportunity for Canada, I believe. So it's just an example, but I think there's a lot that will happen in the joint defense space for Canada and Norway. Subsea, you mentioned, absolutely key. They're very interesting companies working in this space, both in Canada and Norway. And so we see a vast potential for increased collaboration in these areas. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your inputs and insights, Mr. Bindixby. We now conclude the moderated part of our discussion, and we're opening the floor to questions from our live audience on the YouTube. For those watching, please continue sharing your questions in the chat, and we'll address as many as possible in the time remaining. So we have our first question. Norway has traditionally emphasized the importance of arms control and disarmament, even as NATO modernizes its deterrence capabilities. How is Norway navigating the tension between supporting nuclear deterrence within NATO and advancing its long-standing disarmament goals, particularly amid the erosion of global arms control frameworks?
So for us, the arm controls framework, the agreements that are there, they remain valid. And disarmament must remain the long-term global goal. So we're still committed to that. But given the current circumstances, the threat from Russia, it's very real, it's happening as we speak. We are forced to scale up and also help Ukraine in its defense of its sovereignty and of its civilian population. So the agreements are still valid. Norway is not looking into procuring or building nuclear weapons in any case. So the whole global framework for nuclear deterrence, it's still absolutely essential, and we will do our part in defending it. But in the conventional arms space, as I said, we are forced into a situation where it has become absolutely essential to scale up our capabilities, unfortunately.
Thank you so much for your answer. Another question from one of our audience. Can you comment on activities Norway is taking, if any, to address GPS and GNSS spoofing and jamming, which is happening in the far north of Norway near Russia?
Can you repeat the question, Marina? I didn't get the...
Yes, absolutely. Can you please comment on activities Norway is taking, if any, to address GPS and GNSS spoofing and jamming, which is happening in the far north of Norway near Russia?
Oh yeah, thank you. I'm not in a situation to go into any specific details about this, but just to say that all the activities from the Russian side, they remain a concern, and that we are addressing them on our side and are very vigilant, and at the same time scaling up our domestic capabilities also in these spaces.
Thank you for that. One more question from our viewers here, and you've sort of already touched on this, mentioning NATO's broader diplomatic positioning in the world beyond Norway's broader diplomatic positioning beyond NATO, but focusing specifically on the Indo-Pacific region and the evolving and growing role of China, as well as Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand. What principles are guiding Norway's engagement beyond the Euro-Atlantic area, and what should the role of NATO be in Norway's estimation, and what role can Norway specifically play in these partnerships?
Thank you. So NATO's for us, NATO's main focus is Europe and the threat from Russia and the struggle in Ukraine. But as you may know, at the recent summit, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, and Japan, they were invited. So ongoing exchanges with them. These are also countries that we collaborate very closely with. We do participate in some defense activities also in the Indo-Pacific, and we're following developments there closely. So even though it is not our top security priority just because of our geographic location, we still think it is of great importance. And also with regard to China, say we follow developments there closely. Some concerns in the cyberspace, etc., but working jointly, particularly with our NATO allies, and in finding the best ways to address these broad global challenges.
Thank you for that. Over to you, Marina.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bindixby. And with this, we conclude the Q&A part of our discussion. And unfortunately, this is the end of our interview. Thank you so much for your inputs and insights. The interview was amazing. We learned so much. And on behalf of the President and CEO of the NATO Association of Canada, Robert Baines, and the Board of Directors, we express our deepest gratitude and sincerest thanks to you again, Mr. Bindixby, for your responses and your time. And we would love to collaborate in the future with the Norwegian Embassy and with you, Mr. Bindixby, And thank you to our audience for tuning in and watching the interview. Please continue to keep an eye on our social media on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, and also on LinkedIn. Subscribe to our channels and stay tuned for our future interviews with as part of the diplomatic speaker series. And thank you, Mr. Bendixby.
Thank you, Marina, and thanks everyone else at the association for organizing this, for inviting me in. It was really a great pleasure and an honor for me. And I'd also like to thank everyone who took the time to listen in today. So thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, the live stream is done. We are now off the air. Good job, everyone.